very, very late episode of 039 Beyond the Snap Football. Last episode we posted, we were talking about the SEC rematch, which Kieran is wearing his punishment. We'll get into that later. But again, we're in the middle of the college football playoff, and actually where we would have been if there was no such thing as a 12 team. We made it down to the final four. Sadly, the team that Kieran is so nicely representing right on his chest has been eliminated. Such a bummer for him and I. But Texas is still alive, on the other hand, so that's a good thing. Ohio State continues to dominate every single opponent they play. Penn State and Notre Dame are winning games using coaching abilities. Kieran, what do you guys say?
Oh, I was just going to say every game except Michigan. So I've got a suggestion, Texas. Texas equipment staff. You can do Texas the biggest favor the world has ever seen. All you've got to do is find some jerseys from the 60s that are a little faded out. They've got some mud rubbed in them. They've got, something a fan threw at one of the players in the Red River rivalry, something like that, that look a little maize and bluish. Maybe if the fans show up, maize and blue, all that, I think Texas will win. That's
Yeah,
my prediction. If you look like maize and blue, you'll win. If you wear the regular uniforms, not feeling so great. But
and I think
again, suggestion, Texas equipment staff.
and at halftime, I may or may not recollect some UT fan about to go plant the flag at half. I'm just said, I know somebody's trying to go plant the flag in the middle of the stadium. It doesn't. We don't know what's going to happen. We just know that Ohio State's allergic to that kind of stuff. Anyways, let's jump straight into it with some transfer portal news. Kieran, what is the first what are the first couple of things we got covered?
Well, so Georgia now has receivers. Hopefully, these are the kind of receivers that will take a plane from USC to, of course, Athens, Georgia, because, Georgia has had problems with this in the past, but they've also had problems with drops. If you watch the Notre Dame game, it seemed, as a diehard Georgia fan,
Yeah,
every
it
time one
is.
of our receivers was streaking past the Notre Dame defensive back, about to score, it would just clang off his hands. I mean, Gunnar Stockton would throw an absolute dime. I mean, right on the money, straight in the hands, and they'd drop it. And then the very next play, they'd make the hardest catch you've ever seen. So hopefully you can get a little more consistency out of Zachariah Branch and Noah Thomas on the edge. They were both great at USC, but because Lincoln Riley is stinking it up in Southern California, I'm fairly sure that's a rom-com, they have transferred to Georgia. So really, this transfer portal has not been as chaotic as we thought it would be, but there are a few more headlines, and Kirtan's going to fill you in on those.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get through it. So, like Kieran said, Georgia finally they led the FBS in dropped catches, and it was very evident during the game. I may or may not was pulling my hair out on the middle of a cruise ship and screaming at a massive TV where everybody was just watching me have like a mental breakdown. Anyways, that problem is resolved. We have a 6'6" receiver in Noah Thomas. We have one of the best wide receivers when he was coming into the NCAA and still is in Zachariah Branch. So let's not worry about those problems. Somebody who should worry is Florida State's defense. Florida State had one of the worst college football drop offs we've seen in a very, very hot minute. I mean, you could say TCU when they actually went to the went to the finals, came second after Georgia put the hurting on them, but then they fell off a little bit. But I don't think I've seen it fall off from number 4, where everybody was arguing that Florida State should get in, to being one of the worst teams in the Power Five conferences. That's something just that it's just outstanding. They could really have that big of a turnaround, and just in a negative way. So with that being said, both Patrick Payton and a bunch of their edge rushers, defensive linemen, safeties, and corners, secondary, all of them are leaving the team. In addition, Florida State's recruiting went from being a super powered in 2024 to them having every single one of their wide receivers decommit this season. Let that sink in. Every single one of them decommitted. So they are really scraping the bottom of the barrel. But if you're a Florida State fan, there's not all bad news. Florida State has been doing really good in the transfer portal, besides losing some of their key defensive weapons. They are secured themselves the number 5 class. So there's something to be said about that. That means they're still rebuilding a team that once was, and they can get back to those days. Um, and let's talk about the QB carousel, not the coaching carousel, the QB carousel. So now that we have to deal with the transfer portal, there's a lot of quarterbacks that we know are probably going to enter, some are going to the draft. Well, these couple have chosen to switch teams, which I said earlier. So let's start with Connor Weigman. Connor Weigman, of course, got benched for, why am I blanking on his name? Starts with a W.
Marcel Reed.
Marcel Reed. I don't know where I got the W from. He got benched for Marcel Reed. Kind of benched. I didn't understand it fully. He got benched. He came in for a game, did excellent. Then they still gave Marcel Reed the start. And so in the end, Connor Wigton chose to enter the transfer portal. He has landed at Houston. Now, something interesting I just want to mention is his backup will be none other than Hollywood himself. And if you know, you know who we're talking about. Anyways, addition Malik Murphy, the third string quarterback at Texas, technically second string quarterback at Texas, who transferred to Duke and had an outstanding season under Mike Diaz, is surprisingly transferring again and heading to Oregon State to join a, well, Pac-12 that is Pac-2, a two-pack. Um, and lastly, what else can I say? I guess it wasn't as surprising as of switches that I've seen. Of course, we saw again Cromwell go from Florida State and switch out a whole bunch of transfer portal activity. I just expected there to be a lot more star-studded like last year, where we saw the likes of Walter Nolan enter the transfer portal. This year was a little bit quieter, in my opinion, where we saw just a bunch of players that I don't think were getting the proper representation, or maybe just didn't fit in the system and use the transfer portal kind of like it was intended to, not just chasing a bag. Not saying that nobody did. I'm pretty sure Malik Murphy got paid very good money if he's going to Oregon State. But other than that, maybe other people got paid. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they're just looking for the right fit. So that's all I got for the transfer portal.
Yeah, and I just want to say a couple things. So, first of all, here's part of my problem with this. Malik Murphy will have hit 3 colleges in 3 years when he transfers and begins next season at Oregon State. That's too much. You're not at this point, you're not getting a degree anywhere, right? Maybe he got almost done at Texas, but then he's jumping to Duke, which is going to have different course requirements, may not take his Texas courses as credit. And then he's jumping to Oregon State, completely different course requirements, right? And ultimately, you're at college to get an education. Yes, I know a lot of these players will go on to play in the NFL, and that's great. But when you get done with the NFL, you kind of see there's 2 paths. There's broadcasting and coaching, and that's what you have, right? If you don't have a degree, you can't get another job. And I'm not saying that's a problem because you're probably going to be fantabulously rich, but it's still worth it to get a degree, and you kind of have to stay at a school to do that. My second point with this is there's no reason to leave. He set an all-time program record in passing touchdowns this year. He has been absolutely electric. The Duke Blue Devils went 9-3. And I would get it if he's transferring to an Ohio State because they need another quarterback. If he's transferring to a Notre Dame, a program that could take you to the national championship. But Oregon State, even if next year they somehow assemble the best team the world has ever seen, they're not going to see the national championship because they play in the Pac-2, which won't be the Pac-6, which you remember Fresno State and a lot of those other colleges are going in until 2026, which means Malik Murphy's staying there for 2 years, or he's getting another year of eligibility, or he's leaving. And you really can't see him staying at Oregon State for any longer than a year because he's either going to go to the draft or go to another college where he has better chance to contend for a national title. Now, would he walk in and start at some of those colleges? I don't know if that's a guarantee, but he's put up a great season. And to me, if you're going to transfer, you've got to transfer up. If you're playing well and you're in that kind of position. Like Caleb Downs, right? He was able to transfer up. No one thought it would be a transfer up, but he did, right? He was able to go. He's competing for a national championship. His old team is not. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, where you're playing elite and you're able to transfer into a better squad with better players around you to go get a shot at a championship. He didn't do that. It's honestly, I can't make sense of it other than money, right? Of course, that's always there. But this is the kind of stuff the transfer portal should be preventing. It should be, maybe you can transfer up a division or up into Power Five or something like that. Or if you're not playing well, you can transfer down. But it seems a little ridiculous to just jump to random schools in hopes of something clicking and something working. And you can't say, oh, maybe he didn't like the system, maybe he didn't like the coach. If you're putting up records, there is no reason to leave. I don't care what the system is. If you don't like throwing all those touchdowns, go play another sport or go play wide receiver. It's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah, you heard it here first. If you want to succeed, do it the right way. Don't start chasing the bag. That's our hot take. But anyways, moving on from the transfer portal craziness that we always have to deal with, we're going to jump straight into the meat of the conversation. So we know we've been away a while. I mean, we missed every single round of the playoffs except for this one, except for the semifinals. We're here. We're here for the finals. But in the lead up to this, yeah, Karen, go ahead.
Beyond the Snap does not honor the 12-team playoff, so we waited for it to get down to 4, and now we're covering it.
Yeah.
It's not like we were lazy or on vacation or anything. That is exactly why we are still 14 playoff, tried and true, and that's why we're covering it now. Kirtan?
And just wanted to add to that, uh, those games were boring. I mean, the first round, all the favorites won, and then the second round taught us that there's no such thing as a good bye week. So just don't have a bye week. Anyways, yeah, we are at the true playoff scenario, whichever way. If you're pro 12 team, if you're not, we're here at the 14 playoff. It's down to the final four. We are going to see Notre Dame take on Penn State and the Sugar Bowl, I think. And nope, yeah, Sugar Bowl.
No, Sugar Bowl was,
Sugar Bowl is Georgia
yes.
in the. It's not red. It's not Fiesta. Am I cooked?
Yeah, I think you are.
Texas beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl.
Yes, very nice. What's the one New Year's Six bowl remaining, Kirtan?
Citrus, orange, one of the two.
Yes, there you go. Orange Bowl.
Orange Bowl. Anyways, those should be some exciting games. We'll see on one side, we'll see I think, a very big coaching battle. I think we're going to see Marcus Freeman and James Franklin really go at it the same way we saw Kirby Smart and Marcus Freeman play. I think it's all going to be coaching related. I think that it's going to come down to that. I think it's going to come down to who can contain Riley Leonard. Like, can Penn State defense really step up to the plate and do what Georgia could not, and actually understand that when the quarterback lines up underneath center, he's going to run the ball? For some reason, we just couldn't comprehend that. And I don't know. I think this is just going to be a game where Jeremiah Love, he is going to be a big part of the equation. He didn't really come alive during the Georgia game, but Riley Leonard for sure did. And I think if you can get Jeremiah Love starting to run and just get him going, is going to be such a long night for Penn State, even with their incredible defense. And then again, same could be said for the other side. If Abdul Carter gets hot, will Riley Leonard even be able to know what to do? Because their passing game wasn't as strong. And then you put them in bad situations. So I think it's going to come down to a game of exploits. Who can exploit the other team's weakness more? That's your winner of that game.
Yeah, I really think that this game, I mean, you saw some amazing things happen in that quarterfinal game where Marcus Freeman subs on, subs off, the whole team, and then they're able to get Georgia to jump, get a free first down, and seal a game. There's also, I think that if I'm Penn State, I am incredibly concerned about Notre Dame. I was not. I was more concerned about Georgia if I'm Penn State, but if before that quarterfinal game, after it, I'm much more concerned about Notre Dame because it was not like Notre Dame was able to uncover a passing attack, take advantage of a weak Georgia secondary, and just absolutely throw the ball all over the yard. They didn't do that. It's not like Jeremiah Love got hot and just started popping run after run after run, and the tempo and the momentum was just too much. It's not like the Georgia offense was scoring and Notre Dame just scored more. They were able to absolutely bludgeon and stonewall the heck out of Georgia. It really looked like the first half of that SEC championship game. That's the last time I've seen Georgia look like that, and like the first half of the Alabama-Georgia game. So I think it takes a very physical, a very impressive team to be able to do that. And there's, to me, I think that Notre Dame was underrated coming into this. I didn't think they were going to do well. I knew they had great coaching. I knew they had a disciplined group of guys. I didn't think they had the talent to beat the Dogs. They did, because they were able to just absolutely bludgeon the crap out of them. And when an SEC school gets beat, not in the flashy Ohio State style, but like that, it's really should be concerning to whoever plays that team next. And given that it's Penn State, given that they have this history in big games, I honestly think it's Notre Dame's to lose. I think that the combination of Riley Leonard having, and we'll talk about this in the other game too, but having a mobile quarterback against a ferocious D line is, to me, a blessing, because you can get that D line very, very uncomfortable. You can get them caught in undisciplined rush lanes and take off for 5, 10, 15 yards. That's always beneficial when they think they have you and you're able to squeeze free. You can get them caught in the screen game, and it is infinitely harder for a defensive line to make a read, make an adjustment, and make a tackle in the run game when there's the quarterback involved. You saw what Marcel Reed, what Jalen Hurts, holy cow, what Jalen Milroe, and those types of mobile quarterbacks have been able to do to defensive lines. They freeze them, they make them hesitate, and then they're able to get them in play action. They're able to get them in the screen game, and you're really able to take advantage of that aggressiveness and high amounts of skill. So if Riley Leonard's able to do that, able to make some passes where he needs to, and Jeremiah Love and the Notre Dame running backs are able to have a good game, and their defense is able to play good enough to keep Penn State in front of them and keep Drew Aller and the two-headed monster of Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton contained, I really think Notre Dame takes this game. I really, again, I think it's theirs to lose, and I would be surprised if we see Penn State in the national championship game.
So I'm gonna go just opposite here and just show we have some like opposing views. I think this game again. I think Notre Dame does have their own fate. Like it's on themselves right now, because look, there's a tale as old as time that we've really seen when it started with. How far back do I want to go? I'll say Michael Vick. Michael Vick, I think, was the first true example of a mobile quarterback who could do it all. And then we never saw anything like him. But now look at today's football in the NFL and the NCAA. The most valued thing in a quarterback is not his arm strength, is not his accuracy, it is his improvising. Your past, just look at your past MVPs. Who's up for MVP this year? Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. You know what Lamar Jackson likes to do? He likes to run the football. He's broken the record for quarterback rushing yards. Same thing, keep going back. Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers may not have been the most, like, he might not be like tucking a run on a QB like scramble, but he was so good in the open field that you could not tackle him. That is the same thing. There's only 11 players on the defense, and there's only 11 on the offense. Theoretically speaking, you have three wide receivers, a tight end, and a running back to deal with. That is five players that you're going to have to put into coverage. The rest of them, their only job is to get the quarterback. Maybe a linebacker over the top. Everybody else is just trying to get the quarterback. And if the quarterback can escape that, you do not have the numbers to catch the quarterback. And it's just free yards. Again, we saw this with Riley Leonard. Riley Leonard ran all over Georgia because of the fact that we just had nobody to contain him. We had to deal with all the wide receivers. We had to deal with the tight end. We had to look for Jeremiah Love. And then when Riley Leonard just snuck the ball, it was over. We could not stop him at any point in the game. And that was so evident that they were beating us on every single aspect of the game because we could not move the ball. Gunnar Stockton, for some reason, chose to have an off day and say, you know what, I'm not going to run the ball anymore, even though that was literally the only way we beat Texas. I will die on that hill saying we only beat Texas because of that one drive that Gunnar Stockton had at the very beginning of the second half. The only reason we beat Texas. Because in that drive, he took over and he took control. And when he got absolutely popped in the SEC championship, when everybody thought he got decapitated for targeting, that was because he scrambled for 10 yards and destroyed their defense. We beat Texas. Why couldn't we do that against Notre Dame? So going back, I'm still mad about that game. Going back from Penn State and Notre Dame, I think it's going to be that Penn State will learn from all these past examples, from Georgia and Texas, from Georgia and Notre Dame, and they're going to learn, look, there are mobile quarterbacks out there. They know how to run the ball. We need to find a way to stop them. So I bet you there's going to be QB spies in that game. Abdul Carter is not going to be sent on every single blitz. He's just going to be waiting for Riley Leonard to make a move outside the pocket. So I think this game is going to come down to Notre Dame's offensive line and the edge rushers and the linebackers of Penn State going just straight off of roster. I know what happened in the last games. Notre Dame has been like outstanding against Indiana, outstanding against Georgia. I don't think they could beat a Penn State team that is this well rounded, that was able to stop Boise State's Ashton Genty dead in his tracks the entire game. Again, I don't think they've been tested maybe to the full degree, to the nth degree, but I do think that they are up for the challenge. They know how to stop the run game. That is what they prioritize.
Yeah, so now we're going to move to the other semifinal game. And I'm going to start off with a hot take before we even talk about the games last week, before we talk about the Rose Bowl smackdown and the Peach Bowl thriller, a sentence I never thought I'd be saying. Before we talk about all of that, I'm going to say something controversial. I think if I am Steve Sarkisian this week, scheming and planning for this game, first of all, I would start Arch. Second of all, I think in order, if you want to cover and you just want to cover and that's your goal, you want to cover the spread, play decently, be respectable, don't be like Oregon and get beat by 20. You put Quinn in. You put Quinn in and you just take the loss, it's fine. If you want to win the game, you start Arch Manning. And I'm going to say this for a couple of reasons. Exhibit A, Texas has struggled in the run game this last couple of games. They've not been able to get their backs free like they had in the past. This will not get better against a better Ohio State defensive line. Arizona State's front is nothing special, but they were able to absolutely wreak havoc on a Texas run game. You can't have that. You have to paralyze the defensive linemen by using option attacks, by using screens, by using a mobile quarterback, by moving the pocket. Make Jack Sawyer run farther. Make JT Tuimoloau run further. You have to do things like that. There is no way that you beat this team going straight up, especially if you have issues in shuffling your tackles around, if you have issues with your quarterback not being able to move, with if your quarterback being a stationary pocket passer. I don't think Texas can win this game. I think they can make it close. I think they can make a really good run at it, but without the legs and dynamicism of Arch Manning, I do not think you can win this football game. He has shown that he can pass. Sure, there's a chance he goes screwball, throws 3 picks, fumbles it twice, and Texas loses by 30. Yes, there is that chance. But if you're playing for a national championship, which is what Sark is playing here, they've been here before. They've been in the moment. They knew what it was like. And they lost to Washington. I think you've got to send it. I think you have to throw it, put it all on red and start Arch. Because worst case scenario, he gets valuable experience against a very good team that he will have to play next year. And you've gotten him broken in one game against a good team. He can take these lessons. You can watch that film and he can improve in the offseason to come back next year with a resurgent and very good Texas team. I love Ewers. He's been great to this program. Took him to our first playoff. He's been a good quarterback. But from what we've seen from him this past year, and everybody's going to defend his performance in the Peach Bowl. Yes, I know we ended up with 311 yards. Yes, I know he had some great plays in overtime to clinch the game. But look at his stats from the first snap to the last couple of minutes of the fourth quarter. It was abysmal. It was not good enough. Against a secondary that can't hang with your guys, against a group that is less talented, that is less skilled, and that is less experienced than you are, with a young head coach and a young staff, and you can't dice them up for 350 and 4 touchdowns in 4 quarters with a better offensive line, with better weapons, with a defense that was playing lights out. you have to be able to finish that game. I mean, how can you do it against an SEC team in Florida and you can't put Arizona State through the floor? Scatterboo wasn't a factor until the fourth quarter. So to me, I just don't think that Ewers can start fast enough, can play aggressive enough, and can go after it enough to get this Texas team a win. I think you've got to start Arch. Kirtan?
Okay, so you bring up a very good point, and I think this is again what I was just saying about mobile quarterbacks and just their effect they have on the game. To be fair, Will Howard is mobile,
A little bit.
more mobile than Quinn Ewers. Quinn
Yes.
Ewers doesn't understand how to run. Still never seen that boy run. But you've been in the moment before. You played Washington. You know what it's like. You've experienced it. You've experienced defeat, and you were led by Quinn Ewers as your quarterback. I don't know if you win this game. I'll be honest. I'll be rooting for Texas, but I don't think they can win this game against Ohio State just on the sheer fact that Ohio State's been playing lights out, and it really looks like they took the Michigan game personally. But there are some things going for Texas. You win the secondary battle. We're all forgetting that Georgia may be a great defense. On paper, Texas is the number one defense in every single category. They have the best DB in the country in Jade Barrett. So when he matches up with Jeremiah Smith, I'm not even going to question it because I know who's the better player. That's your number one. I think your defense can hold for at least a little bit. I think this game again comes down to coaching. So the one point that Kieran brought up was that yes, Quinn Ewers played abysmal in the first half and really scared the hell out of Texas whenever he had to throw a 20, 30-yard pass to who do you call in the back of the end zone to Matthew who do you call it? Matthew
You mean the
Gold.
one to Helm or the one to Golden?
The one Golden at the fourth
Yeah.
and 19. That one.
Yeah.
That is where their prayers got answered. The Gunner Helm one, that was honestly, that was just blown defense. You left a man open in the middle of the flats. I mean, that's on Arizona State. The defense you cannot blame for Texas because if your offense does not let you off the field, then of course Cam Scatterboo's going to have a record day. I mean, the guy took it personally. They came up with some crazy good plays. To be fair, the throw no one expected, not even I. The fake punt, great, all this stuff. But you did not give your defense any time to rest, so that's not your fault. I think this game comes down to coaching. So when I watched Sarkisian coach his very first 2 years, where they did not make playoffs, where they weren't even close, where they would play games and they would play up to par with the team, whether that's playing Texas Tech at Texas Tech's level or rising up and playing Oklahoma at their level, and is matching. When he plays such a good first half. He scripts it all. That's why it is so dominant. You want to see what scripting is? Watch the very first defensive and offensive performance of Texas in the Arizona State game. That was maybe the best coaching I've ever seen in my life because they knew exactly what to do and they executed in less than 2 plays. Then who do you call it? Ran it back into the end zone. You were up by a lot, but Sarkisian has a look in his eyes, which I've nicknamed the deer in headlights. He gets too comfortable in his situation and he gets so conservative with the football that they lose the game. And it is a tale as old as time. He did the same thing with Bijan Robinson, and every single time you can do the statistic. When does Texas succeed? When does Texas lose? When you play Georgia, how many rushing yards did Jaden Blue and Quintravion Weiser have? They had 30. How many did they have when they played Clemson? 200. How many did they have when they played Arizona State? 30. Why were those games so close? Because they could not establish a run game, because they were trying to he was trying to do too much. Throw the ball, run the ball. He got so conservative that he was not playing his executable football. And I think that's where they lost the game. Ohio State, what do they have? I think they have a chip on their shoulder. That's one of the reasons. I think they have just this confidence, this fear that people are going to play winning against them. Granted, I know I'm rambling on, but granted, when me and Kieran ranked every single team in our Beaver poll, Oregon never touched the top ever, and I think we just saw why they wouldn't. They got decimated by Ohio State, 34-0 in the fourth quarter. Like they got pity points, honestly. What is going to happen when they play Texas? I think Sarkisian probably is the smartest coach out there, maybe behind Kirby. I would put him as one of the best coaches, just to be honest. But I think he's going to this high-powered offense is going to go crazy. We have the defense to match. It's going to be a Texas offense versus Ohio State defense that's going to win this game. If Texas plays the way they played on the very first drive and they script everything and everybody knows what to do, Quinn Ewers is your guy. We know he's accurate. We know that he can execute when he knows what to do. But when you make that man improvise, that is why his draft stock is still low. He doesn't understand what to do. He relies on that South Lake Carroll GPA and all that education, and it does not kick in for him. And so that's what you get with him. That's why you need to script this game. I think it's going to be a talent versus talent matchup, and really, it's going to come down to who is more, which coach, or not even which coach. Will Ohio State's offense be able to execute to the level they have been able to? And will Sarkisian coach an offense and actually structure the offense in such a way that they are able to move the ball? Focus on running the ball, establish that first of all. Gunnar Helm was open on about like 80% of the plays that I watched because he is just the tight end sitting in the middle. Put him on drag routes. He is excellent at a wide receiver. And then look at Matthew Golden. He's going to be covered up like crazy. He's not going to get a catch because they're going to lock him down. He absolutely embarrassed Arizona State. So look for your other weapons. You have two others. You have Ryan Wingo, who we know is fabulous, and you have the other guy that's very fast, Isaiah Bond, who you still have underutilized. Use your weapons. You are the most talented team on paper. Texas could win this. I just don't see so. But I will end with this statement. Whoever wins this game is winning the national championship, just to be fair.
Yeah, I think that's true. And again, I think there are two Sarks. He's got two sides. One is the Dan Campbell 4th-and-1 trick play touchdown. That is the Sark that beats Ohio State. The conservative, I've got a good talented team and I can lean on them Sark, I don't think he does it. I don't think he does it just because I honestly think that you can't out-talent Ohio State. Texas is very talented, but they also know they're talented. Ohio State is talented, but they got a chip on their shoulder because they got beat by Michigan.
Yeah.
And in makeup, you would say that Texas and Michigan are pretty similar. You've got a great secondary when they play well. You have an outstanding defensive line. You've got a good offensive line, and you've had a good run game at times. You also have quarterback problems. Whoa. So there is a chance that Texas is able to dismantle them like Michigan did. But I don't see that happening again. I think Ohio State is just too focused. Again, Ohio State, I've said this since all year long. If Ohio State doesn't win the national championship, this year is an abject failure. I do not care what stick you measure it by. They spent so much money. They have two of the best running backs in the country. I would say like 1 and 3, which is ridiculous, or 2 and 3, depending. They've got a absolutely legendary quarterback who's perhaps been the most consistent, aside from maybe your Dylan Gabriel, all year. He's had issues, I know, but growing into the system, he's playing his best football right now. And this is what's being emphasized by the 12-team playoff. I think, honestly, that 14 playoff, right? Maybe Ohio State makes it. I doubt it. I think your 14 playoff would have been Oregon, Georgia. Georgia. It's hard to justify Arizona State.
Boise.
Maybe Notre Dame, and maybe a Boise, right? So those are your 4 teams. Is it a lot different than these 4 teams? Yes. Are these 4 teams on the whole better? Yes. But again, the grace of the 12-team playoff has favored you. Imagine what we're looking at if Ohio State went to, the Peach Bowl, a New Year's Six bowl game, finished ranked in the top 8, right? Didn't make the playoff, abject failure of a season. I think Ryan Day's out of a job. But because they've been granted this new lease on life, these games after the Michigan game, to get their head right and be playing absolutely lights out, honestly, if I had to bet, I'd take Ohio State, but my heart's got me leaning Texas. All right, So let's get some official picks with scores real quick. You know where we're leaning. You know where we are. We're going to get some official picks with scores. We've still got some absolutely delicious 12-team playoff overreaction and a couple of end-of-season reviews. So, first, my pick in Penn State, Notre Dame. I'm taking Notre Dame. I think they get it done 30-24.
And I will be taking the opposite. I'm going to take Penn State 31-27.
Nice. All right. My pick, Texas, Ohio State. Again, I really hope, I think the Longhorns could put together a full game. They've just had this close game with Arizona State. Ohio State, I know they expect to roll. They probably should roll, but I'm going to take Texas in a squeaker, barn burner, Arch Manning masterclass. 35-34.
I'm going to take. So this is the part where This is the part where I do a bunch of simulations, and I like to see what's going to hit. Is it the spread? Is it the over under on point totals? And I suck at over under. I can never guess it right because at one moment I think, look, we're looking at two high powered offenses, and then I see Georgia versus Texas, and I'm like, well, there goes all my money. Well, in this situation, I'm going to say it's going to be a super high scoring game. I think it's just going to be trading blows, but I think in the end, Ohio State sadly will get it done. They will stop Texas from reaching again to the championship game, and Ohio State will win it 49-35.
All right. So now moving on. Kirtan, what is your 12-team playoff overreaction? I know we're not all the way through. I know we haven't seen the end. But now that we've whittled it down to 4, I think we can talk about the 12-team chunk. Everybody's saying it's too early. You got to give it some years, revamp the seeding, blah, 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 blah. No, we're evaluating this edition of the 12-team playoff, and we're doing it now. Kirtan.
Okay, so first I want to mention how, again, I think you just said it. Seeding was horrible. I don't think that we took into power rankings, and I'm gonna honestly say it. I don't believe that the rankings are fair. This nonsense about four teams that get like a bye because they are supposedly they winners of their conference. Well, let's not forget North Dakota State technically won a conference. I don't see them anywhere near this list. Let's not take into account the Sun Belt. We should put away with this entire ranking system and honestly go to a power ranking how the Beyond the Snap has it. I think that's where you get a true ranking of everybody's talent. Oregon would have still stayed number one. Georgia probably would have stayed number two. Three, okay, maybe Notre Dame. Four would not be Arizona State, or three would not be Boise State or Arizona State. It would be Notre Dame, Texas, Ohio State, and then lower down. How is it fair that an Oregon team is going to get punished for having the greatest season on paper for them? How are they going to get punished by playing an Ohio State who has a chip, who has a reason to beat them, and a Tennessee who is arguably one of the most powerful out of the four that didn't, or out of the eight that were just the field? How is it fair that they have to play them when Penn State did not win anything, lost the Big Ten, got to play SMU and Boise State to get here? That's the first thing. Second thing, I mean, it's not really a problem with the 12 team. It's just I don't see a reason for the bye week and all this nonsense. I don't even think we need a 12 team. I think that what would be more interesting would be almost a play-in system, and I know this is crazy as well. But I say you do a play-in where you just force two teams to play each other just to get into the damn playoff. I think that would be hilarious to watch, because then everybody's just gonna be fighting, like just fighting just to get in. And I guess it's gonna be a version of it. But I mean, we clearly saw that the bye week did not work. I think that giving a team an extra week did not help whatsoever. I'd rather have the experience of playing in a game and having the stress than just waiting for it. It was a good break for maybe teams like Georgia, who could have gotten Carson back, who could get injuries back. But it was better for the teams that were just able to play and just understand how to play, what the moments were, the implications. And I think it was really just a money grab in the end. I don't think we learned anything about these other teams. I mean, again, look at it. The four teams that everybody thought were one, two, three, four. Boise State, me and Kieran said from the beginning, had no chance. Arizona State, no chance, even though they looked like they could have had a chance. Georgia had a chance. Our blue blood should have won, maybe. Still, that was just a bad game. And Oregon, I don't think any of us predicted Oregon to win at all because of the fact that Oregon just doesn't seem like they had the strongest team on paper. They may have had the best season, they may have played the best, but I did not see. I put so much on the opposite of Ohio State beating Oregon. Like I thought that game was gonna be low, which it was. So, needless to say, I think you need to switch the seedings. I think should have been something other than a money grab is for these teams just to have home field advantage. all of that. And I think we really need to look into going to a power ranking, understanding who belongs and who doesn't, instead of just giving an automatic bye to the top four seeds for the conferences.
Yeah. So I think there's three main problems with this playoff. The first is venues. I think there's a huge problem with venues. Nobody's talking about it. And I don't really understand the kind of, it's almost you've ruined both worlds, I think, by the way you're doing the venues. Second of all, number of teams. I think this is wrong. I think there's an easier way to do it. I just think that there's some clear issues here. And then the third one, I think, is seeding. I think if you fix those three things, I think there's a very good chance that the playoff improves. First, venues. So this may be very unpopular, but chunk the home games. Get rid of them. They are possibly four of the most pointless, weirdest venues that don't make any sense in college football. First of all, so playing on the home campuses, I get maybe the stadiums are a little bigger. Maybe it's nice to have in December, right? It's cool to have a home crowd. They've earned that advantage. It makes the games less competitive. We know there's a home field advantage. That Texas crowd was able to lean on Clemson. That Ohio State crowd, I know it's Nayland North, but they were able to lean on Tennessee. You have Penn State absolutely whited out the SMU Mustangs. And there's really just this kind of feel to me of it's cheap. It's the same thing as a regular season game. They all felt like exhibition games to me. Maybe that's because they're all sleepers, right? But because there's still so long to go to the national championship, they feel like exhibition games. It feels like the first round of March Madness. Like, if you're a basketball fan, I know you pay attention to it, but are you on the edge of your seat? Are you absolutely losing it when Duke is thrashing Grambling State by 50? Like, it's not the same kind of quality, right? And forget about the quality of the teams. If they play at neutral sites, I think you get better games. I also think that you've destroyed bowl season, and for what? I mean, now all the New Year's Six bowl games are playoff, which is okay, but also not really, because they all feel like they're just leading to something, right? It's all this big build up to the national championship. And while that's great, I think it was so much better when you had the two standalone standout games that had the playoff semifinals, and then you go to the national championship, right? And then you have some normal New Year's Six bowls. And I think that would be a good system if you're able, you can still play with the bowl games, right? You can still have those as the bowl games, but you're also able to have a kind of, maybe a couple that are different bowls that rotate in, that aren't New Year's Six major bowls, and you could have some kind of interesting playoff games, right? And at least it would make it more interesting in terms of, and more honestly just kind of weird and strange and neat to have those kind of things. I don't like the home games. I think it just makes everyone go to sleep. At least it made me do that in the first round. But I think if you can fix those venues, get the Rose Bowl to be the national championship, please. Do some stuff like that. You can get the historic, you can get the history, you can get all of that, but you have to distinguish the bowl games. Because when I was at the Sugar Bowl last year, right, the whole town was there for the Sugar Bowl. Yes, I know it's New Orleans. Yes, I know it's New Year's. Yes, I know there are people there for other stuff, but it feels like the whole town is there for the Sugar Bowl. Everywhere you go, Washington jersey, Texas jersey, Washington shirt, Texas shirt, and hotels filled with fans. Now, I'm sure that happens some at these other bowl games, but you're not seeing those shots of just the fans filling the streets. Because to me, it's not as much of an affair. Maybe these next couple will be, but so far it's not been that much of a brouhaha, a celebration of college football that it feels like it should be, and you've robbed the bowl season. The bowl season games have been better on the whole than the playoff games, and they're getting less attention and getting absolutely robbed. So next, I think seeding. Yeah, Kirtan said it, hit it on the head. You really have just got to get rid of the buys, get rid of the top the top kind of seeding for conference championships. Um, and I also think that you've got to essentially cut it down to 8. I don't think the 4 teams are really doing anything. Maybe there's a chance somebody makes a run, but I don't really think so. And, you've got Boise State in there representing the group of 5. That's great. But is it really what you want? Boise State could have had an amazing season. You send them to a bowl game with a Texas Tech, with a BYU, with a Colorado. Genty maybe breaks the rushing record. Nobody really cares because Barry Sanders did it in 11 games, but it's impressive. You get that, right? And instead, he gets stuffed in his last college game and is now off to the NFL and loses his last game, right? And I honestly think that there's going to be a big debate over the playoff, but I think 8 teams or back to 4. 4 is all right with me too. 8 teams, no home games, and don't screw over the bowls.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you have it. Those were our ideas. And now, lastly, let's talk about some of the end of season reviews. Kieran, was Michigan a QB away from winning the national championship?
Yes, I firmly believe this. I think they've had issues on other places, right? They've had problems. Kalel Mullings is not Blake Corum. Donovan Edwards has not played well at all. You have a defense that's been inconsistent at times, and with the injury to Will Johnson, it's just not exactly what it was last year. But with Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, and this defense that we've seen was able to beat Ohio State. I get it. Ohio State absolutely laid an egg coaching wise, but Michigan still beat them. You still have to put 11 men on the field and beat their 11 men who are more talented than you, even if their scheme is not up to par. So that combined with offensive line that's going to be good, I think better weapons than last year, and a really good tight end that was way underutilized in Colson Loveland. If you limit the turnover issues, because the quarterback stat lines are abominable, and I think if Alex Orji had turned out to be the passer that we had all hoped he was, in addition to a good runner, I really think Michigan is making a run, if not very much in the top of the national championship conversation.
Yeah. And I don't know, I just don't think they had all the pieces together. I think we're judging too much based off of one game against Ohio State where they played amazing. But again, early in the season, they had struggles too. They played Texas, and Texas absolutely wiped them from head to toe. So they had issues there. Again, they played a phenomenal game against Alabama to win that in their bowl game. But again, same could be said for a whole bunch of teams. Would Alabama have won the national championship if Saban was still there? That's always a question that nobody will be able to answer. I can promise you they wouldn't have lost to Vanderbilt because that would have never flown. Those kids would have been running till sundown, from sunset to sundown. I know that makes no sense. From sunrise to
That's the
sundown.
zero time. Great. Good job.
Yeah, exactly. They wouldn't be running because they would have won the game. And then in any other case, I feel like this is just too broad of a statement. I think if they had a quarterback like a Jalen Milroe, like a Dylan Gabriel, I think they would have been much more competitive. Would we be talking 12-team playoff capabilities? Yes. Winning a national championship, again, I don't know. I always think of it this way: if you play a team twice, the team that won the team that lost the first time will win the second time. I've only seen it be the other way around, maybe a handful of times, including the Georgia Texas game. I honestly firmly believe that Texas was going to beat Georgia. I forgot that Bert Auburn forgot how to play football. I think he meant to go play soccer. I don't know why he's doing it on a football field, kicking all these field goals that he's missing. But same could be said for the Ohio State game. Ohio State had a chip on their shoulder, and it was evident from the moment that coin toss, like the moment the coin was in the air, the game was over. I honestly believe. I think the moment they kicked off, the game was over. The moment Jeremiah Smith caught a touchdown, Oregon knew it was over. It was like as clear as day. So I think you could look at it that way. And so I don't know if you played Ohio State and Michigan one more time. I don't think Ohio State loses. We say that every year, though. They always find a way to. I just don't know. But in this case, I don't think so. I think Michigan had a better season than what others were expecting them to have. You got your quarterback, though. Let's not forget, Bryce Underwood is committed. He is flipped from, what was he originally? LSU. Flipped over.
Yes.
So now he's over here at Michigan. That is great. You have everything going for you. I do think they're going to be dominant. And if you can keep beating Ohio State, you are always going to be a good team, and you will always have that chip on your shoulder.
Yeah. So again, great question. We will be getting more. We'll be grading teams A through F on their season and doing all of that in the coming weeks. But we were gonna wait, push for this national championship. Once that's over with, we will begin the off-season slog, because off-season isn't a bad word here on the Beyond the Snap podcast.
Mhm.
So, moving on to yet another end of season review. So, the SEC, right? Their champion is gone. Lost in the first playoff game. Tennessee, absolutely wiped. They've been bested in bowl games by Michigan. They've been bested in, but well, Vandy did great. Other than Vandy, SEC's getting wiped. So, is the SEC finished, Kirtan? Is it over? Is the reign over? Are the Midwestern boys from up north and Oregon going to beat us?
No, I don't think that'll ever happen. Look, SEC, no matter what you say, even if Ohio State wins this, even if Oregon was the 1 seed for the entire year, I don't think you can ever fully say that because I don't think they play the caliber. Maybe they have an Ohio State that may be the equivalent to an Alabama, Texas, Georgia. Great. But if you're looking at the Big Ten and I say, here is the 10, 12 teams that play in the Big Ten, go play the SEC teams that you match up with. Let's just go straight off the list. Ohio State, Texas, because those are the two champions that we see so far. We're going to figure that question out today or on Saturday. Let's look at the next round. Or,
I
right?
think it's
Saturday.
Friday, buddy.
Oh, Friday. I mean, I'm going to watch no matter what. Let's go down the list. So Ohio State, Texas, that's going to be answered. Who came next? Oregon, Georgia? Based off what I saw, Georgia. Not even close. Let's keep going. Who came third? Penn State, or yeah, technically it should be Penn State, Georgia. I'm still taking Georgia. Who do you call it? We'll take who was next? Bama, Michigan. Michigan. Granted, half of the Bama team did not even play that game, so just keep that in mind. So honestly, I would take Bama in a real situation. And then you keep going down the list. Tennessee versus whoever's after Penn State. Or let's take Penn State. Tennessee, Penn State. I think it's close. I'll still give the nod to Penn State, but all of the bottom feeding teams, no offense to them, Nebraska versus Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt. LSU versus literally whoever's fourth, fifth, or sixth, or seventh, or eighth, LSU. Whoever is taking on A&M, A&M. Whoever's taking on, who else did I miss? Auburn, I don't know. Florida, if they have DJ Lagway starting, I'll take them. Kieran, what's up?
Small point of order: USC, who is, I believe, very much bottom half of the Big Ten, beat both LSU and A&M.
That was last season.
That was this season.
They played LSU this season and won.
Yes, exactly.
Really?
Yes, week 1.
Okay. Granted, the A&M game does not count. You don't get to play a team in a bowl game and say that you won. That's like when Texas beat Georgia all those years back, saying, "Oh, we won." Yeah, okay, our quarterback didn't even play the damn game. Doesn't matter. Bowl games do not count unless they're actual playoff games, and the only reason for that is because all the kids that are getting drafted first round do not want to play. All the people that are transferring out will not play. Everybody else is fair game. We saw a third string quarterback throw for 300 yards in the UNT game. Bro is a walk on. He hasn't played a game since JV Vandergrift high school football. Let that sink in. And threw for 400 yards. You were telling me that you're letting a JV high school football kid beat you and throw 400 yards on you. Like, no, you can't talk to me about bowl games. Okay, USC is a great team, but who else? Let's see who else USC played. USC had to go through the ringer. They played teams such as Utah State. They won. They lost to Michigan. They lost to Minnesota. You take Minnesota versus any of the SEC guys? I'm taking the SEC teams. They played Nebraska. They lost to Washington. Washington this season versus anybody, I don't see a win. Maybe they beat Kentucky. Maybe they beat our bottom feeding teams, Mississippi State. But like, I don't see anybody here that was true talent besides from Michigan, all these teams. So okay, maybe it's a lot closer than it was in my head between the rivalries and the teams. I will admit, but I think the football still runs through the SEC. You cannot tell me that the dynasty's over when you had Georgia in the mix, when you still have Texas in the mix, when you have A&M, when you have Bama, you have all these teams and all this history. It will never be over. The dynasty is not going to be shunned, and you'll see next year. I did think the SEC would win the championship this year. I was wrong, but we're taking this.
Hey,
What do you mean?
the SEC could still win the championship.
I mean, it's not looking likely.
All right, buddy.
But if they do, still great. But if not, you cannot count them out. Who just secured the number one recruiting class, Kieran?
Texas.
Who got the second?
Alabama,
Bama. Who got the third?
Georgia, LSU.
Exactly. Do you
Georgia.
hear in Ohio State even relatively close to that? No. Your top three recruiting classes are SEC teams. If you were telling that they're finished, how is it possible that their future is so bright? Something I guess we'll never figure out. I think SEC is never going to be done. Yep.
Point of order: Ohio State was 4th.
Okay, but who are the top three?
Oregon was 5th. Auburn was 6th, though. Auburn was 6th.
Okay, so that's 4-2.
Okay, we're gonna keep going. Texas A&M 7,
5,
LSU 8,
6,
Michigan 9,
3.
Florida 10, Tennessee 11. You want me to
Yeah.
keep going?
No, you don't need
Okay.
to. It's 8-3. So exactly, they are not finished. Kieran, what do you think? Do you think that the SEC is done?
This year, probably. I think that the SEC has had an off year. You've had teams play inconsistently, which is not like the SEC, and you've also had teams just flat out get beat. I don't think that's going to be the case for very long. I think that eventually, because the Big Ten, right? Those teams are able to split. You're able to have a clear split. You're beating up on all the little guys, and you are playing close with your competitors. Again, that's Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan some years, right? Most years, not this year, for the most part of the season. But in the SEC, right, there's a lot of competitive games, right? You've got your top runners, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas, and Georgia, right? Those are kind of your top teams. But then you got Vandy. It's playing it close with Texas, beating Alabama. Talented team. You've got Florida mixing it up with Ole Miss, getting blown out by Texas. You've got Kentucky keeping it close, beating Ole Miss, doing these kinds of things, and just absolutely, generally, being a solid, rock solid team. You've got just good teams upsetting each other. Even Oklahoma was able to beat Alabama. Should they have? No. But I think the SEC's depth has gotten them this year. You had amazing regular season SEC football, and now you're kind of paying the price because there's some injuries. There's some, maybe with healthier running back room for Texas A&M, maybe they're in the conversation. With other things like that, maybe other SEC teams have made it there. And the SEC has not played great this year, but I think they'll be back. And I think overall, they're still a deeper and more thoroughly complete league. I know the games on the field don't say that this year, but I think given the history of past dominance, and I don't see that stopping with the recruiting rankings and just the general wealth of talent coming out of the South.
Yep. And lastly, that was a great answer to all that. But to wrap it up, 2024 was such a good season. When was the last time we saw anything like it?
It's been a while. It is, I will venture to say that 2024 has been the best season in terms of upsets in the regular season. Now, I'd argue it didn't mean as much because of the 12-team playoff. But if you ignore the playoff seeding, ignore what it's for, just take the regular season games, I think it is probably the best since before either of us were born. And that's as much as I can say. because I didn't watch any football before I was born, or for a little while after I was born. About 5 years old, so that would have been 2014. The playoff era is when Kieran really started watching football. So I would argue that I can't really evaluate anything before then, and my memory's a little fuzzy up until about 2016. So honestly, I gotta say, best season since before, as long as I can remember, which I'm aware isn't very long to you old salts, but I think that's still something impressive, and I think it'll be the best season for quite a while, at least in terms of regular season games.
Yeah, and honestly, I would have to agree. I haven't been watching football since or I started whenever the whole Alabama went crazy, won all the championships. Tua before Tua, when you had all these old heads, Ezekiel Elliott back in 2015, all this stuff. But I will say, not even about the upsets, about Vanderbilt being so good, about just the timing of everything. That's what made the season special. Nick Saban saying before the Vanderbilt Alabama game that Vanderbilt will never win. Them playing that back in the stadium. LSU or whoever saying that it wasn't loud in A&M. A&M going crazy and messing with the entire team. Same goes for running backs. Running backs are now expendable in the NFL. Nobody needs them. Ashton Genty put on a performance of a lifetime. And no one can ever take that away from him. We saw probably one of the best Heisman races of all time. And I think this was the first time you can actually call it a race between two people because it could have gone either way. And it literally has been proven that one guy won the people's vote for the Heisman, the other guy won the actual Heisman. Let that sink in. We saw all this stuff. Carson back out. We saw injuries like crazy. We saw these whole transfer portal flips. We've seen the greatest bust ever with Florida State being horrible. We've seen the emergence of some teams like Arizona State, who nobody expected to actually be good. Camp Scatterboo, just everything was built to the timing. Like everyone's saying, Florida State deserved to be there. Did they really? They didn't look like they did. Not this year. Arizona State being ranked the worst ever college football playoff team of all time. I mean, were they really? They did take Texas to the second overtime. All this stuff was just so perfect. The SEC, the chance for Texas and Georgia to play three times. I know it won't happen anymore, but for the odds of them to play three times, once in Texas, once in Georgia, again in Georgia, would have been insane. All this stuff just wrapped up a incredible year just for the underdogs. For people who love football, this was your year. You got everything you want. You got a real Heisman race. You got real controversies. You got real drama. If you like Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, if you like football, if you like any of these things, we had it all. We had comedy with Nick Saban and Pat McAfee doing dumb stuff. We had drama with all these players in their whole lives, like, oh, I'm the best running back. No, I'm the best running back. Blah blah. Blah. I deserve to win it. You had actual football with teams like Michigan upsetting, Vanderbilt upsetting, with just dominant performances, Texas, Georgia. This was everything that you wanted and more.
Yeah, and think back to August 24th, 2024, those many months ago when Georgia Tech took down number 10 Florida State
Yes.
in the Aer Lingus Classic, finished it off with an upset over Miami. Syracuse upsets Miami to end the regular season in the ACC. Across the board, absolutely insane upsets. Genuinely, it was an amazing season. We were proud to cover most of it, except for the parts where we were inexplicitly, let's just say, missing in action. Gone but not forgotten. And honestly, well, okay, probably both. But, it's been a great season. It's been our pleasure to cover it. Yes, there's still 3 more games left, but it has been one heck of a season. The first season with the 12-team playoff, and I think we will remember it for a long, long time.
Yep. And with that, we are signing off. We will see you for championship week. And we will give you everything we have. Personal videos, no more promises. I don't know what's going to happen with those. We will try. I can maybe squeeze 2 in. It's just, guys, editing is a pain. All this stuff is a pain, but if I can get it up and running, I'll be back. Just give me time. Y'all are about to see the greatest drop of a video of all time. It's probably going to be something championship related or some nonsense that we talked on the podcast, but you'll see something pretty cool coming up.
All right.
And with that, Kieran, you got anything else?
Nope. Other than happy 1 year anniversary,
Yeah.
because that was several days ago. But we've officially been doing this for a year, almost 40 episodes. 40 episodes in 52 weeks is pretty abysmal, but
It's
we're
pretty
getting
sad.
there. It will be a wonderful new year for Beyond the Snap if y'all subscribe.
2025 and 2026 will be the greatest years for Beyond. Again, we are in our junior year, so there was not high expectations. When we go into our senior year, trust me, we're gonna be the number one podcast in the state of Texas.
Yes,
We will have
sir.
literally nothing else to worry about until March when all of our applications come back.
Yeah.
But for now, we will try to get you our videos. We got our weekly or bi-weekly podcast in, so don't worry about it. I promise you next week for the championship, we will be here talking about what happened in these semifinals and who's going to win it all. Peace. Alrighty.
God, that was long.
Yeah, that was a brutal episode.
Okay.